much like spilled glitter, Doctor Who gets everywhere. We've already done several videos about the Doctor Who references in TV shows, video games, and movies, but guess what? We are still not done. So whether it's a line of dialogue, a prop, or something a bit more subtle, I'm Ellie for Who Culture here with 10 more times Doctor Who appeared in movies. Number 10, Ted 2. The brainchild of Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane, Ted is a movie about a child's teddy bear that comes to life and causes all sorts of problems for his adult owner. MacFarlane voices Ted, Marky Mark Wahlberg plays his buddy John, and in the 2015 sequel Ted 2, this dynamic duo is joined by Mamma Mia star Amanda Seyfried, who plays Sam. After an argument with John and Sam, a furious Ted runs away and ends up at New York Comic Con. The ensuing sequence results in a massive and hilarious brawl between various cosplayers, including an unmissable nod to the Whoniverse. Alongside the likes of Flash Gordon, Bumblebee from Transformers, and Godzilla, a chunky Dalek of the Bronze Time War variety can be spotted in the background of the fight. Everyone should get out of there. Don't you know how dangerous those things are? Now, this wasn't the first time MacFarlane had referenced Doctor Who in his work. Family Guy is full of nods to the show, and considering how much of a Star Trek fan he is, he literally made his own Star Trek show with the Orville, there's a good chance he's seen a fair few episodes of Doctor Who in his time as well. Number 9, Ready Player One. Ready Player One, both the Ernest Cline novel and the Steven Spielberg-directed 2018 film adaptation, is one big homage to pop culture. The premise is that the world's population is addicted to an online virtual reality called the Oasis, which, like the real internet, is full of movie and TV references. More obvious examples from the movie are scenes set in The Shining's Overlook Hotel and on Voltron's planet Doom, but Doctor Who fans have to keep their eyes peeled to get their fix. One of the many challenges that protagonist Wade Watts has to overcome is a seemingly unbeatable race, which of course he beats. After his victory, Wade's avatar goes to a workshop with his friends, and tucked in the background you can spot the familiar shape of a blue police box. The TARDIS isn't the only fictional gizmo in the shop either. Half of the Iron Giant takes up most of the foreground, while the Ferrari from Ferris Bueller's Day Off can also be spotted. Spielberg is said to be a Whovian himself, and reportedly came close to being involved in a Doctor Who revival in the mid-1990s, which eventually became the 1996 TV movie. But this Ready Player One Easter egg is as close as he got. Number 8, Sid and Nancy. The Sid and Nancy from the 1986 film of the same name are Sid Vicious, bassist from the punk group The Sex Pistols, and Nancy Spungen, the girlfriend who died after Vicious allegedly stabbed her. The movie shows off all the grubby glory that made the Sex Pistols so popular and revered in the 1970s, with Gary Oldman and Chloe Webb giving great renditions of the title characters. The scene where they first meet isn't just pivotal to the rest of the story, but it also has a very unexpected Doctor Who reference. Vicious and his bandmate Johnny Rotten visit their friend's house and find Nancy there with her. The four talk while the musicians scoff down some baked beans, and Rotten mocks Vicious with a funny voice. Eventually, the voice morphs into a robotic one, which Rotten exemplifies by proclaiming, "Exterminate," in the style of the universe's most fearsome dustbins. It's weird to think that someone as outrageous and anti-mainstream as Johnny Rotten would have sat down every week to watch Tom Baker run around a quarry, but he must have seen at least one episode, or perhaps he just got swept up in Dalek mania. Number 7, The Forgiven. The Forgiven is a forgotten movie from 2021. It stars Ralph Fiennes and Jessica Chastain as David and Jo, a married couple who take a trip to Morocco to try and reconnect. Sadly, the exact opposite happens, as David accidentally runs down a young boy with his car. In accordance with the boy's family's wishes, David travels to his village to witness the funeral. While there, he stays in the boy's home and sleeps in his old room, where he comes across a rather interesting British artifact. As well as being a fan of fossils, the boy was clearly into Doctor Who, as David finds a small Dalek toy in his bedroom, which symbolises how young and innocent the boy truly was. Your first thought might be that this is just a meaningless bit of set dressing, but when you realise that this movie also stars 11th Doctor Matt Smith, that Dalek suddenly seems very deliberate. Somebody in the props department was clearly an 11th Doctor stan, and who can blame them? Or maybe they just wanted to wind up Matt Smith. And then of course there's that little fact about Ralph Fiennes once being married to Riversong herself, Alex Kingston, and then things just start getting really weird. Number 6, Sydney White. Presumably inspired by the success of 10 Things I Hate About You, which adapted Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew to an American high school setting, somebody thought it would be a good idea to take the story of Snow White and translate it to the modern day. The idea may have been good, but the execution was not. Sydney White was a pretty poor showing across the board. Not even Amanda Bynes in the title role could save it, but at least it's got a Doctor Who joke to balance things out. After failing to gain entry to a sorority, Sydney finds herself making friends with the Seven Dorks, a bunch of tiresome, nerdy movie cliches disguised as people. Sydney's popularity rubs off on them, and they all get invited to a party, which the Dorks cope with about as well as you'd expect. One of the hilarious fish-out-of-water moments comes right at the start of the party, when the host says that the DJ takes requests. One of the Dorks asks if he has the Doctor Who theme tune, and when he's told no, he casually takes out a CD case with Doctor Who written on it. And you know what? Fair play. Most parties could be improved with banging tunes like I Am the Doctor or the Sylvester McCoy title theme. Let's be honest. Number 5. Breakfast on Pluto. These days, Cillian Murphy just has to tie his shoelaces and someone will give him an award, and he'd probably deserve it too. One of his earlier critically acclaimed performances came in 2005's Breakfast on Pluto, in which he plays a transgender woman trying to find her long-lost mother. The movie, which also features Brendan Gleeson, Liam Neeson, and some other famous Irish people, was far from a commercial hit, but Murphy's performance was highly praised and netted him a Golden Globe nomination. Murphy's character Patricia encounters many interesting folk throughout her life, including childhood friend Lawrence. Lawrence is obsessed with Daleks, to the point that he drives around in a fully functioning Dalek costume, plunger and all, accidentally intimidating people as he goes. Tragically though, it's Lawrence's passion that gets him killed. In a later scene, police are called to deal with a suspected IRA car bomb and use a robot to investigate the vehicle. Lawrence sees the robot and, thinking it's a Dalek, runs up to it. The car then explodes, killing him in the process. Not exactly a fun entry, this one, but Breakfast in Pluto is a fantastic movie that is well worth your time. Number 4. Carry On Screaming. Much like Doctor Who, the Carry On series is a British institution. The franchise features 31 different films, most of which are spoofs of various genres. In 1966, the 12th entry, Carry On Screaming, was released, a send-up of classic monster horror movies. Carry On regular Kenneth Williams plays the film's villain, a mad scientist named Dr. Orlando Watt. This leads to a side-splitting scene where a detective asks him what his name is. He replies, "What?" They ask the question again. You get the idea. During this exchange, the detective also asks, "Doctor Who?" To which Watt replies, "No, who is my uncle? I haven't seen him for ages." A clear reference to the time-travelling antics of our beloved hero. This connection becomes even better when you realise that Carry On Screaming features an appearance from none other than Jon Pertwee, playing a character named Dr. Fettle, years before he assumed a very different role with a very similar name. Number 3. Paddington. The second bear-themed entry on this list, although this one has a much less foul mouth. The only people in the world who don't like the Paddington movies are people that haven't seen them, or that suffer from a chronic joy deficiency. Just ask Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal. They bloody love the Paddington movies. The original and its first sequel feature a who's who of British acting talent, including our very own 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi. Capaldi plays Mr. Curry, Paddington's meddling neighbour who despises the fluffball with all his heart. In the first film, Mr. Curry conspires with taxidermist Millicent Clyde to kidnap Paddington and have him stuffed. Once he goes through a change of heart, he warns the Brown family that Paddington is in danger, which leads to this intriguing scene. Mr. Curry contacts the Browns from inside a telephone box, and he just so happens to be wearing a long knitted scarf around his neck. The Doctor, in a phone box with a long scarf? Surely this is too obvious. Intentional or otherwise, this is a fun detail for Whovians to pick up on. Paddington started shooting shortly after Capaldi's 12th Doctor casting was announced to the world, so it would have been very fresh in the filmmakers' minds. Number 2. Matilda the Musical. After starting off as a book, then becoming a film, and then a stage show, Matilda reached the next part of its evolutionary chain in 2022, when the stage show was also adapted for the big screen. Matilda the Musical brought the all-singing, all-dancing, all-levitating things with your eyes story to families around the world, and was for the most part a jolly good time. One of the many songs that viewers got to hear was Bruce, which is all about the legend that is Bruce Bogtrotter and his quest to devour an enormous chocolate cake. As his appetite begins to wane, the other kids cheer their classmate on by singing a little tune, which contains a reference to what we assume is one of Bruce's favourite shows. Or maybe your largeness is a bit like the TARDIS, considerably roomier inside. I may or may not have listened to that soundtrack quite a few times. Okay, so while largeness and TARDIS isn't the strongest rhyme in the world, it's nice to see the old gal immortalised in song. The Matilda story is set somewhere in the 1970s to 1980s, so these kids would have been the perfect age to grow up knowing and loving Doctor Who. Also, Doctor Who's stage musical When? Yes, please. Number 1, World War Z. Every British bone in my body wants me to say Z, but I know the title of that film is actually Z. It's only fair that the greatest eyebrows in all of time and space get to close this list out. Starring Brad Pitt in a world overrun by the undead, World War Z is the fan-favourite zombie movie that fans are still demanding a sequel for over a decade later. As he scours the globe for a solution to the outbreak, Pitt's character, Jerry Lane, travels to all sorts of different places, eventually ending up in lovely old Wales. That's classic Doctor Who right there. Jerry soon stumbles across a World Health Organization facility where he meets a team of scientists. With their help, he is able to figure out a way to counteract the zombie threat, which he eventually uses to save the world. Of particular interest here is that one of those World Health Organization boffins is played by our boy, Peter Capaldi. So, does his character get a name? No. He's credited simply as WHO Doctor. You know, World Health Organization, WHO, Who, Doctor, Doctor Who. You get it? Okay, yeah, you get the point. Considering World War Z released just before Capaldi was announced as the Doctor, was this all one big coincidence, or did the filmmakers know something we didn't? Well, we know how the Doctor feels about coincidences. Either way, we're counting it as a reference. It's too good not to. Come on. And that concludes our list. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that we have many videos covering this topic, so why not check out the original 10 times Doctor Who appeared in movies. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for Who Culture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.